doing this shit called Animosity. It's with Richie Rich, Snoop Doggy Dogg, The Governor, and Tupac. It's on the Thug Life album.
We remember them as rivals, but they started as friends. And in the very last days of his life, Biggie Smalls wanted us to know that. 9 days before the tragedy at the corner of Wilshire and Fairfax, Biggie opened up about the ghost of Tupac Shakur in a way we had never heard before. It's a story of fame, loss, and a friendship that was cut short twice. This is what Biggie really thought about Pac at the very end. Steaks, fries, and Hennessy. The secret friendship of Pac and Biggie. The line between being friends and being rivals is super thin, especially when you're both fighting to be the king of rap. Tupac and Biggie were the two most powerful forces in hip-hop, but their bond didn't start with beef or diss tracks. It started with shared meals and big dreams. Both of them wanted to show the world the truth about the streets, the pain of being poor, and the problems with racism. But eventually, the world ignored all that and turned their story into a simple map. East Coast versus West Coast. This led to the biggest, most chaotic fight in music history. It ended up costing both of them their lives right as they were becoming superstars. Tupac was shot on September 7, 1996, and died 6 days later. Exactly 6 months later, Biggie was shot and killed on March 9, 1997. Both murders are still unsolved today. The real truth lost in all that violence is that these two were once like brothers. Tupac's journey started in Harlem. His name was Lassane Parish Crooks, and he was raised by a single mom who moved the family constantly to try and stay away from crime. He lived in Baltimore and then California. All that moving shaped him, and in Cali, he really fell in love with poetry. He worked his way up from the bottom, starting as a dancer and a roadie for the group Digital Underground. When he finally got the mic for his 1991 debut album, Tupacalypse Now, the world realized they were listening to a revolution. At the exact same time in New York City, Biggie was navigating the streets of Brooklyn. He was a smart student who was amazing with words, but he spent his nights dealing drugs and rapping just for fun. He said it was just cool to hear his voice on a tape, but he was so good that the Source magazine noticed him. That caught the eye of Sean Diddy Combs, and by 1993, Biggie dropped his first song, Party and Bullsh T. The two finally met that same year in Los Angeles. Biggie was out west for work and asked a local guy to introduce him to Tupac. Pac welcomed the Brooklyn crew with open arms. He greeted them with a giant bag of WD and a military bag full of firearms. They spent the afternoon running around the yard playing like kids. Then, Tupac went into the kitchen and cooked steaks, fries, and Kool-Aid for everyone. Sitting there, eating and laughing, a legendary friendship was born. They became inseparable. Tupac's crew thought Biggie was an amazing rapper, and Pac even gave Biggie a bottle of Hennessy to seal their bond. Biggie would sleep on Tupac's couch in California, and when Tupac went to New York, he'd roll through Biggie's neighborhood in a white limo to shoot dice. They even performed together at Madison Square Garden for a famous freestyle where Biggie shocked the crowd with his raw talent. Even with that big show, Biggie was still just a local hero in Brooklyn. Tupac was already a platinum star and a movie actor, so he became a big brother and a mentor to Biggie. Young rappers would hang out in smoky hotel rooms just to hear Tupac teach them how to survive the music business. Tupac paid extra attention to Biggie. He mentored him and let him open at his concerts, and Biggie even asked to join Tupac's group, Thug Life. Tupac was proud of this. He claimed he changed Biggie's sound by teaching him to rap for the women if he wanted to make real money. You can hear the change in Biggie's music, going from the aggressive party and Bullsh T to the smooth vibe of Big Papa. But Biggie saw Tupac dating Madonna and living in luxury while he was still wearing the same boots for a year. He felt his label was too slow. He actually asked Tupac to be his manager to help him get to the top. Tupac looked at his friend and said no. He told Biggie to stay with Puff, because Puff was the one who would make him a star. The setup at Quad, the night the music died. In 1994, Tupac was in New York filming a movie called Above the Rim. He played a character named Birdie, who was a dangerous gangster. To get ready for the role, Tupac started hanging out with a real-life dangerous guy named Haitian Jack. Tupac basically used Jack as a role model for his movie character because he loved Jack's expensive clothes and his high-roller lifestyle. He wanted people in New York to respect him as a tough guy, just like they respected Jack. Biggie knew Jack was bad news and specifically warned Tupac to stay away from him, but Tupac didn't listen. He loved Jack's flashy Versace lifestyle and wanted that same street respect in New York. This lifestyle eventually led to a nightmare. After partying at a club called Nell's, Tupac met a 19-year-old named Ayanna Jackson. A few days later, she went to his hotel room at the Le Parker Meridian. She claimed that Tupac, Haitian Jack, and several other men gang-raped her there. Tupac said he was innocent and was actually asleep in another room during the attack. When police arrived, they found firearms that Tupac later claimed actually belonged to Biggie. During the trial, the lawyers claimed Tupac set the woman up as a reward for his friends. Tupac denied this, though he later said he regretted not doing more to protect her. Things got even more tense when Haitian Jack got a legal deal that seemed too good to be true. Tupac started calling him a snitch in the media. It was a risky move, but Tupac felt untouchable because of his fame and money. However, his legal bills were piling up, so he agreed to record a verse for a rapper named Little Sean for $7,000. That recording session was set for November 30th, 1994, at Quad Studios in Manhattan, a night that changed everything. When Tupac arrived at the studio, he saw his friends Lil Cease and the Junior Mafia calling down to him from the windows. It seemed like a normal, friendly night, until three gunmen stepped out of the shadows in the lobby. Tupac fought for his life, struggling over a gun as the shooters opened fire. He was hit multiple times, including a terrifying shot to the groin. When he finally made it upstairs, bleeding and in pain, he looked at the people he used to call friends and saw something in their eyes that chilled him to the bone. Tupac didn't think this was just a random robbery. He thought it was a setup. He openly accused Biggie, Puffy, and the whole Bad Boy label of knowing the attack was going to happen. Biggie and his team strongly denied it, but the damage was done. The friendship that started with steaks and music was officially dead. It was replaced by a cold hatred that would eventually start a rap war with no winners. On December 1st, 1994, a beaten-up Tupac showed up to a New York courtroom in a wheelchair, covered in bandages. He was found guilty of Al abuse in the Ayanna Jackson case. Even though he was cleared of the most serious charges, the judge still sentenced him to at least a year and a half in prison. His bail was set at $3 million, money he just didn't have, so he was sent to a maximum security prison in upstate New York. While he was behind bars, his third album, Me Against the World, was released. At that point, Tupac was so exhausted by the drama that he actually thought about quitting the music business for good. But then, a rumor started spreading that changed everything. People Tupac trusted were whispering that Biggie knew about the shooting at Quad Studios before it happened. To Tupac, Biggie's silence felt like a stab in the back. He felt that since he had mentored Biggie and helped him get famous, Biggie owed him the truth. Even if Biggie didn't plan the shooting, Tupac couldn't believe that the King of New York wouldn't know who was shooting people in his own city. To Tupac, this wasn't just street politics. It was a deep personal betrayal by a man he once called a brother. While Tupac sat in his cell watching his money disappear and his mother almost lose her home, he reached out for help. He sent a message through his wife to Suge Knight, the boss of Death Row Records. Suge didn't hesitate. He immediately put $15,000 in Tupac's prison account. Suge started making the long trip from LA to the prison in New York, offering Tupac more than just cash. He offered him a way out of prison and a spot in the most powerful, wild record label in hip-hop history. By August 1995, the deal was done. Suge visited Tupac one last time before heading to the Source Awards in New York. Death Row put on a huge, scary show with jail cells on stage. When Suge went up to accept an award, he took a direct shot at Puffy. He told every artist that if they didn't want their boss dancing in their videos and all over their songs, they should come to Death Row. The crowd started booing because, until that moment, Suge and Puffy had actually been on good terms. The reason for this sudden war was Tupac. During that last prison visit, Tupac told Suge how much he hated Biggie and Bad Boy Records for their role in his shooting. He told Suge he was going to destroy them and needed Suge to have his back. Suge promised his total loyalty and decided right then that Tupac's enemies were now his enemies. Those famous words at the Source Awards were the first shots in a coast-to-coast war, built on suspicion and hurt feelings. A war that would eventually spiral out of control and kill the two greatest rappers to ever live. 7 days in September, the final breath of Tupac Shakur. On the West Coast, representing the heart of Los Angeles, stood Tupac Shakur and Death Row Records, a power that refused to be ignored. This rivalry became the main story of 90s hip-hop, a line in the sand that forced fans, artists, and even industry bosses to choose a side. Both men eventually turned their music into a battlefield, where diss tracks became their main weapons. Tupac's "Hit 'Em Up" remains one of the most aggressive attacks in rap history, a direct hit aimed at Biggie and the entire Bad Boy camp, where he even claimed he had slept with Biggie's wife, Faith Evans. In response, Biggie dropped "Who Shot Ya?" And although he said it wasn't about Tupac, the world heard it as a cold-blooded joke about the Quad Studios shooting, throwing more gasoline on the fire. The feud didn't just change the music charts, it changed the very soul of the music. Hip-hop had always been a mirror for the struggles of the community, but now the stories were becoming darker, more violent, and more hostile. It created a sense of danger that felt all too real, ultimately leading both stars toward a tragic end. The shooting at Quad Studios and the fight it started permanently changed the landscape of rap, marking the end of one era and the start of another. The impact of the feud changed the path of hip-hop by making Biggie and Tupac even bigger stars and turning Death Row and Bad Boy into unstoppable forces for years. It taught everyone that a fight between artists can get out of hand, proving there is often too much money and too much ego involved for things to stay peaceful. The end for Tupac Shakur began on the night of September 7, 1996, in Las Vegas. He was riding in the passenger seat of a black BMW driven by Suge Knight when a white Cadillac pulled up next to them at a red light and opened fire. Tupac was hit 4 times, taking bullets to his arm, his thigh, and twice in the chest, causing massive damage inside his body. While Suge was only grazed in the head, Tupac was rushed to the hospital, where he fought for 6 days on a breathing machine. Despite the efforts of surgeons who removed his right lung, he eventually died of respiratory failure and heart failure on September 13th at the age of just 25. The moments immediately after the shooting were as defiant as his music. When the first officer on the scene, Chris Carroll, found Tupac bleeding in the street and asked him who shot him, the rapper's final words were a blunt "F you." He lost consciousness shortly after and never woke up. For years, investigators like Dan Long believed that both Tupac and Suge knew exactly who the shooter was, especially since the cars were only a few feet apart in a well-lit area of the Strip. Suge later claimed that even in the hospital, the atmosphere was strange, with the two of them cracking jokes before things took a turn for the worse. He even claimed that Tupac's mother, Afeni, eventually made the painful decision to let her son go rather than have him suffer through a life of complications and prison. Knight's story took a darker turn as he suggested that Afeni allegedly gave her son pills to end his life when things looked worst. He claimed she told the doctors never to touch him or bring him back if he had more problems, essentially choosing to let him go. This added a layer of deep tragedy to the shockwaves that sent the public into a frenzy. People were desperate to solve the murder, leading to several conspiracy theories. Some believed Biggie arranged the hit, while others thought Suge planned it to stop Tupac from leaving death row. There was even a theory that the hit was meant for Suge and ordered by his own wife, Sharitha, though she has strongly denied those claims. However, the most common and realistic theory is that Tupac's death was purely gang-related. Death Row and Suge Knight were heavily linked to the Mob Piru gang, who were enemies of the Compton Crips. An LAPD source confirmed that the murder was likely gang revenge. By signing with Death Row to get out of jail, Tupac unknowingly made himself a target for the Crips. This was further complicated by the fact that just hours before the shooting, Tupac was involved in a fight with Orlando Anderson at the MGM Grand Casino. Anderson had reportedly tried to steal a Death Row chain from someone in Tupac's crew, and the rapper attacked the moment he saw him. A Crips leader later admitted that the death was a simple revenge killing for that specific beating. If Orlando had never been jumped in that hotel lobby, it is likely Tupac would have lived through that night. In the weeks that followed, a wave of gang violence broke out in Los Angeles that was seen as direct payback for the rapper's murder. There were a dozen shootings in Compton alone, leading to a massive police raid that saw 23 people arrested, including Orlando Anderson. Although Anderson was the prime suspect and was questioned by police, he was released and never charged before he was eventually killed in a different shootout in 1998. The pursuit of justice did not stop with Anderson's death. Afeni Shakur filed a lawsuit against him, and legal papers alleged he was seen with the exact type of weapon used to kill her son. Decades of silence followed until July 2023, when a search warrant was used on a home in Henderson, Nevada. This home belonged to Dwayne Keefe D. Davis, a gang member who had written a book claiming he was actually in the car with the shooters that night. Davis identified himself as the uncle of Orlando Anderson and stated that his nephew was one of the people in the white Cadillac. This breakthrough led to Davis's arrest on September 29, 2023, where he was charged with first-degree murder with a gang enhancement. The story of Tupac and Biggie remains a warning about how quickly friendship can turn into a war that consumes everything. They were two masters of their craft who used their voices to expose the truth of life on the streets, but they became caught in a script that neither could stop reading. Their deaths marked the end of an era, but also ensured their names would live on forever as icons of a culture that is as beautiful as it is dangerous. Even now, we look back at those final days and see two men who were more alike than they were different. Two kings who were ultimately taken down by the very world they tried to describe. 9 days before his death, Biggie Smalls opened up about Tupac. By early 1997, Christopher Wallace was looking for a way out of a war that had already taken too many lives. Known to the world as Biggie Smalls, the legendary rapper was determined to end the East Coast-West Coast feud that many believed caused the 1996 murder of his friend-turned-rival, Tupac Shakur. Biggie was now a father to a young son and was using a cane after a brutal car accident. He was focused on finishing his second masterpiece, Life After Death. He traveled to Los Angeles in February 1997 to shoot the video for Hypnotize and stayed for the Soul Train Music Awards. He used every interview as a chance to say how truly sad he was about Tupac's death. His wife, Faith Evans, remembers a heartbreaking phone call from him during that trip. His voice sounded low and small, and through tears, he told her that things had gotten messed up along the way. Despite all the noise, he told her he still considered Tupac his brother. Biggie was visibly shaken by the loss. He realized with cold clarity that all the money and security in the world couldn't protect a man from street violence. However, he wasn't exactly a traditional mourner. He couldn't forget that Tupac had spent his final months telling the world that Biggie and Puffy were behind the Quad Studios shooting. He couldn't ignore the lyrics where Tupac bragged about sleeping with Faith, or the songs where he talked about wiping out the entire Bad Boy roster. No matter how deep their bond had once been, the scars of those final months remained. Biggie even told a friend he wouldn't attend Tupac's service, but as it turned out, fate wouldn't have let him go anyway. Just 2 days after the shooting in Vegas, New York police arrested Biggie and Lil Cease for marijuana possession and took their Lexus. When they finally got the car back, it wouldn't even start, so the dealership gave them a Chevy Lumina to use. The very next day, while driving on the New Jersey Turnpike in the pouring rain, Cease lost control of the car. The vehicle jumped a barricade in a violent crash that broke Cease's teeth and fractured Biggie's leg in 3 places. It took emergency crews cutting Biggie out of the van just to save him. He spent the next 2 months in rehab, starting therapy and talking to God. He eventually decided it was time to slow down and change his path. Even before the wreck, he had started pulling away from the chaos of Brooklyn, moving to a quiet, gated community in Teaneck, New Jersey. At 24, he was a platinum artist with a daughter and a son on the way. His dreams were getting bigger than the recording booth. He wanted to buy his mother a home and had launched Undia's Entertainment because he saw, through Puffy, that the real power was behind the scenes. But to secure that future, he knew he had to make peace with the West Coast. Since no one had been charged in Tupac's murder, the rumors were spiraling out of control. Some blamed the Crips, and others pointed the finger directly at Bad Boy. The weight of the rumors turned Biggie quiet and withdrawn. He told writers that the hustle just wasn't worth it anymore. He decided the best way to bridge the gap was through music, recording Going Back to Cali as a tribute to the West Coast sound. He and Puffy followed that up with a massive promotional trip to Los Angeles, a move that would ultimately be a fatal mistake. Despite his peaceful intentions, the LA crowd was cold, giving him loud boos when he took the stage at an awards show on March 7th to announce a winner. By March 8th, Biggie was restless at the Westwood Marquis Hotel after a trip to Europe fell through. He spent the day discussing tour plans with his agent, but eventually convinced his crew to head out to an industry party at the Peterson Automotive Museum. Sponsored by Vibe magazine, the party felt like a safe bet, and for a few hours, it was exactly that. Even with gang members slipping into the room, the atmosphere was celebratory. Biggie drank champagne and soaked in the love from peers like Aaliyah and Missy Elliott. Russell Simmons remembers throwing paper at him and joking about how cool and calm he seemed while Hypnotize blasted through the speakers. But the room eventually became too crowded, and around 12:30 in the morning, the fire department shut the whole thing down. As the crowd poured out onto the street, Wallace and Combs paused for photos before heading to their vehicles. Puffy jumped into the lead SUV with his bodyguards, while Biggie settled into the front passenger seat of a green GMC Suburban, driven by Gregory G. Money Young. The lead car made it through a yellow light, but Biggie's SUV was caught at the red light at the intersection of Wilshire Boulevard and Fairfax Avenue. In the quiet of the idling engine, a dark Chevy Impala pulled up alongside them. The driver, a man in a blue suit and bow tie, made eye contact with the rapper before reaching over and emptying an automatic pistol into the Suburban. The shooter sped off into the night as Puffy abandoned his own car and ran back across the street to find his friend bleeding over the dashboard. They floored it to Cedars Sinai Medical Center, where it took 6 people to lift the 400-pound rapper onto a gurney for emergency surgery. Despite the desperate efforts of the medical team, the 4 bullets had done too much damage. At 1:15 a.m., Christopher Wallace was pronounced dead. The loss was a staggering blow to a community that was supposed to be celebrating his growth. 1 week after his funeral, Life After Death hit the shelves and became one of the best-selling rap albums in history. It was a bittersweet monument to a man who died trying to end the cycle of violence. Much like the murder of Tupac, the case remains unsolved. It serves as a haunting reminder of a friendship that started with laughter and ended as a tragedy that the music world still hasn't fully processed. The tragedy for Biggie in LA and the bright lights of Vegas for Tupac are now permanent landmarks in music history. We remember the beef and the bullets, but we must also remember the backyard barbecues and the shared dreams of 2 kids who just wanted to hear their voices on the radio. Their lives were cut short twice, once by the industry and once by the streets, but their impact is immortal. In the end, Biggie wanted us to know that beneath it all, the love for the game and the respect for his brother never truly went away. It is a story of fame and loss that continues to echo through every beat and every verse of the artists who followed in their footsteps, proving that while the men may be gone, the ghost of their friendship still haunts the mic. Who do you think really killed Tupac Shakur? Share your thoughts with us in the comments below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, click on the next video shown on your screen. You will enjoy it.